Welcome to One with the Other Way, a podcast about your journey and finances. I'm your host, James. We have Wanda and Peggy with us today to react to some Reddit content. Today we're talking about houses and homes again. In this episode, we'll start with the first question. Does it make sense to buy a house anymore? My husband is in tech and I'm in healthcare, social worker, so not like a doctor or anything. He obviously is the breadwinner. He got laid off in November after just 15 months at his company. While he is getting some traction, we don't think he will be without a job for long. It makes me think. In a world where you might get laid off every 2 years, or every layoff comes with a chance that you'll have to move because more and more jobs are in office, does that make financial sense to buy a house anymore? We are looking for homes before the layoff, and now I'm thinking it might be better to rent and throw all of our extra money out of retirement savings or investments. They talk about how you're better off paying into a mortgage than paying rent, but if you're having to move every 2 to 5 years, you're paying mostly down interest, not principal, and how much can you realistically expect your home values to rise in that time? I don't know. It's just very confusing times, I think. First of all, there's a lot of information here. Peggy, I know you're in the process of buying a new home, so I'll let you take the lead on this one first. But how do you feel about this statement overall?
I think that it's probably a pretty common sentiment at this point because of where we are in the affordability and whatever. I'm actually building a house, so it's a little bit different than this situation. I mean, it's taken me 3 years and I don't have a house yet. So I can understand the fear in that case about buying a house with potential layoffs and moving. I can understand her fear. Now, does it make sense? What do you think, Wanda? I mean, there's so many expenses when you buy a house, right?
She is, in fact, building a house, I will say. And I'm going to lead with the end here. It is very confusing times. And a lot of people don't understand what it takes to buy a house. And what amazes me is the home is the most expensive purchase you will ever have in your life. And so you should, a harsh word, take a beat when you're looking at buying a home to determine whether or not it's in your best interest now and over the next 2, 3, 5, and 10 years. In a world where people are changing jobs every 3 years, that is a factor. Anytime you move, there's expenses associated with a move. With the geographical move, there's expenses associated with it. If I buy a house, it's not just buying the house, right? But it's also the expense of buying a house. So I have a house now and I need window treatments. I have a house now and the refrigerator needs replacement. There are so many little things that need to get adjusted in a house that there's expenses associated with even just buying a house, not just the superficial, this is what the house costs and this is what the mortgage is. So you're layering in the expenses of moving every 3 years, layering in what it takes to make the house the home, and then layering in the mortgage, right? Those are 3 different lanes you have to consider. Yeah. Versus taking a look just at rent. And so sometimes people, what they do is they look, okay, if it costs me this much to rent and this much to buy, my mortgage costs this much, look at these numbers. It costs me the same, but it's really not the same because you have all these other layers on the mortgage. In addition to, so this is just the initial, when you own that home, when you buy that home, that commodity, that thing is now yours and you have to maintain it. And that's about 2% of the value of the home, which is on the backside. Versus rent is very clean. I'm going to pay this every month. Now, it's not a popular thing to say. Yet the best thing to do in these confusing times is take a minute and look at the numbers. And I think it's best to look at the numbers with a person who's not emotionally tied to those numbers and to say, okay, this is the comparison. This is what that looks like. This is what that looks like. And then in so having the numbers, you can then make a decision for yourself. And that kind of thing, a financial advisor can provide clarity in objectively looking at these numbers, not emotionally tied to your situation, to help you through these confusing times.
Yeah, I think this particular person too has actually really thought this out, right? Because they're already saying, you're paying mostly interest in the first 2 years. And what if we have to get another job? And
Right.
so I think in this person's case, they're going to have to weigh in things like, well, what is the likelihood of a geographical move? I mean, if you're just moving across town, your job changes, whatever, that's a different thing. But when you're talking about a 2-year where you might have to actually leave the area, that's a totally different thing. So you do have to weigh it. And it seems like this person is actually thinking about all the right things, but still emotionally attached to it.
And I agree with you. They are thinking about some of the right things, but they're not potentially thinking about the layering.
How do you see people respond to this sense of pressure? At least I see it in my age range with people I know. Everyone's buying, and it feels like this, like there's this pressure that you have to buy a house. And the writer of this kind of alludes to this pressure where it says they talk about how you're better off paying into a mortgage than paying rent. But like this it's almost this like they in the ether from my perspective. Who's commanding that this is how it is? How would you as an advisor come in as a third party to help someone make a decision on if it's actually the right time to buy or if they should buy at all?
Let me take that. They say that, which is why I love the podcast name, One Went the Other Way, because just because they say something, that doesn't necessarily mean it's best for you. And sometimes I don't think we spend enough time honoring what's best for you, the individual. And so even though they think, right, they don't know, they don't walk in your shoes. They don't know your life. They don't know your numbers. They don't know your dreams and aspirations. They can do what they want, but your life is yours to own. And so I think that, again, finding that person to sit back and look at your life so that you can have the things that you want in your life and how the house may or may not fit in versus rent, and compare the two numbers. It doesn't mean anyone's making a decision for you, but it means that you have the tools and the numbers that you need to make a decision for yourself in your situation. Does that make sense?
We're just going to look at the numbers. We don't take into consideration what whoever they are, says.
Right.
We're going to look at the numbers.
Right.
But what are some of the consequences to buying a house when you're not ready to buy a house?
Financial disaster. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I think actually there's another Reddit post that you have that specifically talks about financial disaster. But
no, it's just
the biggest thing I think, right, is people say, oh, hey, I'm going to buy this house, this $400,000 house, right? And then they scrape up what they want for, or what they can get for the down payment, right? And they're like, gosh, I got this down payment. I'm going to put 20% down, $80,000. But they don't think that on day 2, all the maintenance belongs to them. And that's 2% of the value of the house. And all of a sudden, impending disaster, as Peggy is saying. And it could be something where it's a leaky toilet or something in the plumbing, or those are the big problems, right?
It's really, yeah. But I mean, I think the big thing is buyer's remorse, right? They, right? Let's just say they again. Oh yeah, this is great. And you're going to get this house, and you go out with the budget and you think, oh, I'm going to buy a house. It's this much. I can afford it, whatever. And then of course it's always more. And then you didn't probably take into consideration the costs and all of the fees for loan originations and all of that stuff. And then like Wanda said, maintenance is now yours. So, you really need to think about all those other things. Furniture, is your house going to be 3 times the size of what you have now or half as big? Because you're either going to have to get rid of or get more. And so all of those things are a lot of dollars or a lot of waiting. And so you have to kind of just figure it out if you're going to be okay with that, right? Are you going to be okay that you're going to wait? So when you're buying outside of what you should be buying, there's going to be consequences. And not say you can't make it work, but
right,
you might not be as happy.
Well, okay, happy is questionable. But I do want to comment about they again. Can we pick on they? I would want to give they a name because it just seems so vague. Yet they will tell you to buy a house. They will tell you to buy a house, but they are not going to be there when you run into a problem or when the budget doesn't work or when the maintenance needs doing?
Of course they're going to be there. They're going to be there saying, well, you should have looked at that. You should have known this. And, well, duh, why didn't you read this article? They're going to be there. They are not going to be your friend, but they will be there.
Those poor they people.
Now, this goes into the next question we have, where it says, I bought a house and I don't know what to do. I bought a $440,000 house in August of 2025. My income in 2024 was $139K. 2025 was $169K. I'm in sales, 100% commission-based, no base salary or other type of compensation. The last 6 months, my industry has taken a turn and my income has tanked. I have been taking home enough just for my expenses, and I'm starting a second job soon. Hindsight is 2020, and I probably should have waited to buy a house, but here I am. Since buying the house, $11,000 in unexpected repairs have come up. There is now something wrong with my plumbing, thinking that there may be a few thousand more to fix, but not sure yet. I am down to $20,000 in cash savings. I have $32,000 in my Roth IRA that I can tap into for mega emergencies, but obviously I don't want to do that. I feel like I made a huge mistake and I don't know what to do. I miss the days of renting where I could just call someone to fix any problem I had for free. Every day I'm stressed and worried about the house and what's going to go wrong next. What would you do if you were in my shoes? I feel ridiculous for thinking I want to sell and go back to renting, but I feel like I'm running out of options and money. I can't help but feel like I made a big mistake in all of this. TIA to anyone who reads this. Thanks in advance. So that's the first one. Wanda, this sounds like it's going through the exact issue that you just brought up about unexpected repairs. It's like insult to injury. You know, you've got income tanking, you've got expenses.
Yes, my heart is bleeding a little with you. It is terrible sometimes to have just commissions, because then you do get into pickles where they tell you this is what you should have done. It's those they people again. And you're asking, what would you do if I were in your shoes? You're asking that the they people, what would they do? And this is a toughie. That's a $400,000 house, right, on income of $140,000. That's a lot of real estate to maintain. And if you were to look at what that represents on your balance sheet, it sounds like not a lot of equity in the home. So it sounds like really you only have this liquidity of $52,000, which is, if you think about it, if a house is worth $440,000, a hard asset of $440,000, liquidity of $50,000. And that liquidity of $50,000 has to support this $400,000 out there. The numbers seem to be at a mismatch here. And I don't think it's crazy to consider selling the house. I think that the numbers need looking at to say this might be the best way forward, not to mention the emotional stress you're going through. I can't imagine as you're looking down the road, what's going to happen next, right? Because things could get worse. I don't know what kind of job you have or what kind of commissions, what the potential is here. But if you're having to get a second job to support the income needs, then it means you're going to have less focus in this place that you get commissions. And so then the income may, in fact, continue to go south. And so stepping back and looking at the numbers, and not impending disaster, but I don't think it's crazy at all to think about selling the house. You could stay or you could sell. And if you're being honest with yourself, an evaluation of both of those paths to figure out what's best in your long term, I think is in your best interest at this time.
I would look at other things as well. Okay, you've had the house for a year. We don't know, does this person have a family? Do they have kids? Can they get roommates to help with the mortgage? Right. There's a lot of things that maybe you could look at. It's great that you're looking at a second job, but as Wanda said, that might actually hinder your sales commissions because the time focus, the stress you're under is also a big factor. I mean, if you feel like I want to rent again, then that's a totally different thing. Don't judge yourself for the simplicity that you felt in the freedom of renting, because a lot of people don't even want to buy a house and they like that freedom. But I would look at other things too. Is there anything else in your budget you could cut? You have some emergency funds. So is your industry going to turn around? I don't know. Is there something that's affecting that? So getting the second job and then looking at your overall cash flow to see if there's other ways that you could also save, maybe getting a renter. it's hard to say without more information.
Well, there's always a comment on these Reddit things, right? You don't have all the information. You only have some of the information. So just hopefully we're giving you some ideas.
This question that I wanted to pose was the variability or the variance in how long it takes to sell a house.
I would say in this case, one of the things that anytime someone is thinking about selling a house, I suggest that they get a real estate professional to take a look at the house to see what it would take to bring the house to market, and then what the average time a home is on the market for. So those three things, because that is all factoring on the should I sell the house part of the equation.
Yeah, I agree. So the plumbing's going to have to get fixed. So just keep going forward, fix your plumbing, because that's going to have to happen.
Right.
But even if you do that and you get a real estate professional to come in and give you this thing, you still have to be continually watching, because as we know in some previous podcasts, I think we talked about this, that I asked this question about when should I put on the market? I want to close at this time. And, I was given a date, and then the market here locally tanked, and it took me 8 additional months to
right.
close.
How long did they say that it was going to take to close?
Well, right. Well, because when I asked this question, it was probably say November, right? And I wanted to close the end of January, and it's put it on the market in the beginning of December for an end of January close, because houses were selling in 10, 15 days. December comes, it's no, we're not going to be ready until March. So we'll put it on in January for an end of February close, that kind of thing. But by the time January came, houses were taking much longer to sell. And then by the time February came, there were 4 houses on my street that were all for sale, and they were all rental properties. So they were all for sale very low, but needed a lot of work. It's a really big thing about timing. And I don't think that the decision it's kind of like timing the market.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you have to make the decision. Yes, that's a one factor, but you have to remember that the timing of the market is also going to be very variable, and outside things influence that. And it might be local influence, and it might be state, or maybe it'll be global events. Who knows?
So many things that you're saying there, right? So when you think about financial planners, right, they look big picture. And I differentiate that from accountants that think zeros and ones. So you do things like you get information, how long a house is on the market and when you should put it on. Those are 0 and 1 things, right? And then you have the big picture of what if it doesn't go exactly the way it's supposed to go? And so in your case, right, it was sad, right, because you wanted to get the house on the market and you asked all the right questions. But one wonders if the other people on your street asked the big they, and all of them came up with the same timeline. So when you brought your home into the market, right, everybody else had that same kind of thing in their head about this should be 10 or 14 days in the market. And then it took you 8 additional months. And again, that's factually what happened. It took you longer.
Yeah.
However, as you're trying to make a decision ahead of time, right, what you want to try to attempt to do is quantify as much as possible. And then life happens. Right. And then we go like this again, right? Mm-hmm. And somehow you got from here to there, and you're building your home right now, which looks quite lovely.
Well, if you yourself are trying to buy a home or sell a home, or you're just trying to make decisions regarding what is the next right step in your home buying process, you can meet with Wanda or Peggy to have third-party advice regarding this that aren't attached to you buying the home or not. And you can meet with us at financesforreallife.com. The schedule an appointment button is in the top right of the page. And you can continue following this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you have a great rest of your day.
Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice offered through Finances for Real Life, a registered investment advisor and separate entity from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.